So why is our thinking about marriage so convoluted in society today? When did it get so off track? Because you watch, old TV shows like Leave It to Beaver and stuff, and you go, man, this is not the way most marriages look today. Well, the devil, we have a God who has a good plan for your life and wants to bless you. You also have an enemy, the devil, who has a terrible plan for your life to destroy you. He has been attacking marriage, and he's got three primary deceptions that he uses to attack and undermine the institution of marriage. The first was the sexual revolution in the 60s and 70s. Marriage was intended to be a place where humans could enjoy sex within that framework, and it's a good thing created by God. The sexual revolution said you can have sex with whoever you want, whenever you want, just do whatever feels good. And obviously that created a whole lot of darkness and depravity, promiscuity, rampant pornography use, infidelity. This ultimately leads to child abuse and sex trafficking and abortion. And today we see how that's all playing out. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Gender confusion and children mutilating themselves because of that. That's all a byproduct of the sexual revolution. In a revolution, people usually become free. With a sexual revolution, what it did was enslave people. Enslaved them to sexual sin. It should be called the sexual devolution. Because what we did was we went backwards in God's design. We tried to do it our own way. And so rather than experience life-giving, healthy sexuality in marriage as God intended, society promotes a toxic, soul-sucking, casual sexuality. Another attack vector on marriage has been feminism. First wave feminism was really about voting rights and legal equality, which is not a bad thing. But then progressively after that, subsequent waves of feminism sought to erase the differences between men and women that God had created and say, men and women are the same and they should be treated the same and they should be able to do everything the same. And in reality, God created men and women with different roles and different functions. Modern day feminism is not about creating equality, but often you hear talk about tearing down the patriarchy. Whoever the patriarchy is some bad guy like Darth Vader. We got to tear down the patriarchy. The word patriarchy, what it literally means is father rule. And this concept of father rule is embedded within the Godhead, within the Trinity. The Son submits to the Father. In a family, a father is the leader of his household. A husband is the leader of his wife. And God designed it this way. It says in 1 Corinthians 11, but there is one thing I want you to know. The head of every man is Christ. The head of woman is man. And the head of Christ is God. I'm going to talk more about this concept in headship in subsequent weeks. But God designed men and women to be equal in value, but different in function and abilities. There's a poem by G.K. Chesterton called Comparison. It said, if I set the sun beside the moon, and if I set the land beside the sea, and if I set the town beside the country, and if I set the man beside the woman, I suppose some fool would talk about one being better. See, one is not better than the other. Man and woman both have a different type of glory, the Bible says. We got to understand our unique roles in that. Another attack on the institution of marriage has come through the creation of the welfare state. The welfare state. It was originally sold to us as, hey, the government's going to help people in poverty, give us like a safety net so they don't unnecessarily suffer. And so you can see how, in theory, that sounds like a really good thing. We don't want people to live in poverty. But what it did is it created a system where people could have sex and get pregnant and have babies without consequence, knowing that we don't need a husband or a father to provide for these kids because the government will do it for them. In reality, it's the responsibility of providing for a family that creates stability in society. An author, George Gilder, author of the book Men in Marriage, he said, civilization is built by men with families to feed. It's the need to work and provide that creates human flourishing and stability in the family and society. It's not supposed to be the government's job to take care of a wife and her kids, a woman and her kids. It's supposed to be a husband's job to take care of his wife and his kids. This is one of the reasons why This is one of the reasons why the Bible says that God hates divorce. In the Old Testament, it says this in Malachi 2, didn't the Lord make you one with your wife? In body and spirit, you are his. And what does he want? Godly children from your union. So guard your heart, remain loyal to the wife of your youth. In other words, you don't trade her in for a new model when she's sagged and bagged, you know? Remain loyal. She gave you the years of her youth. You remain loyal to her. That's what it's saying. Then God says, I hate divorce. Why? Notice, God doesn't hate divorced people. He hates the act of divorce. To divorce your wife is to overwhelm her with cruelty. Why? Why is that? In this culture especially, a woman who had been divorced was likely to end up impoverished and destitute. And God's saying that's a cruel thing. Guard your heart. Do not be unfaithful to your wife. And so, man, we don't want to see divorced women impoverished. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm getting back to how the welfare state created a system that made husbands and fathers optional. When in reality, God intended that that man would provide for his family. And hear me on this, that doesn't mean he has to make more than his wife financially. Like I told the bold men a couple months ago, I was like, if your wife makes more than you, more power to you, bro. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make sure your kids have food in their stomach, whatever it takes. So the government created this system. The enemy has been attacking divorce, lots of deception. And today we see divorce is too common. It's way, way too common.